Those ships there. We're making our case before those ships. And Ulysses stands here arguing with me. But he did not hesitate to back away from Hector's flames when I stood up to them and drove them from our fleet. And so for him, it's safer to compete with crafty speeches than battle on with fists. I'm not quick at using words, and he is slow to act. Just as I'm powerful in battle and ferocious warfare, that man excels in talking. But I do not need, I think, to give you an account of my great deeds. You Greeks all saw them. Let Ulysses here tell us of his exploits, things he did, when there were no witnesses, those actions which are known only to the knight. The prize I seek is great, that I concede, but then my rival here makes it less valuable. However great a thing may be for Ajax, there's no reason to take pride in it if Ulysses seeks it too. And in this contest, that fellow has already got his prize for when he is defeated. He can say he fought it out with me. As for myself, if you had any doubts about my courage, my noble birth is a strong argument. My father is Telamon, who captured the walls of Troy, led by brave Hercules, and reached the shores of Colchis in that ship from Pagasae. And my father's father was Aeacus, who dispenses justice down there below, among the silent dead where Sisyphus, the son of Aeolus, still pushes his huge stone. High Jupiter has acknowledged Aeacus, admitting he is his son, and therefore Ajax stands at 3 removes from Jupiter himself. And yet you Greeks, do not let my descent speak for me in this quarrel. If those bonds are not shared by me and great Achilles, he was my cousin. As for you, Ulysses, who in thieving and deceit are just like Sisyphus, your ancestor, why are you striving to involve the name of a foreign family in the affairs of those whose blood links them to Aeacus? Or am I to be denied those weapons because I took up arms before he did, without being tricked by an informant? Or will he be seen to be the better man because he was the last to take them up, and by pretending to be mad, refused to serve in war, until Palamedes, son of Nopulus, a shrewder warrior, exposed the plot his timid mind devised, and dragged him to a war he would have avoided? Is the man who declined to take up arms now to collect the finest arms of all? Am I, who was the first to face the dangers, to be dishonored and denied those gifts from my own cousin? How I wish his madness had been real, or we had believed it true, and he had never come as our companion against the towers of Troy, this fellow who urges shameful acts upon us. For then we would not have stranded Philoctetes, Boeotus' son, on Lemnos, to our disgrace. Men say that now he hides in forest caves, shifts stones with his laments, and keeps praying Laertes' son will get what he deserves. If there are gods, he does not pray in vain. So now, alas, a man who swore an oath, the same one we did, to join the conflict, one of our leaders, heirs to those arrows left by Hercules, is broken by disease and hunger, fed and clothed by flying birds, and uses arrows fate reserved for Troy to shoot at fowl. But still, he is not dead, for he sailed no further with Ulysses. Wretched Palamedes would have chosen to be left there. He would still be alive, or at least he would have died without being called a criminal. That fellow there remembered all too vividly how Palamedes had exposed his so-called fits of madness and charged him with betraying the Grecian cause, something he just made up. He offered proof by finding gold he had earlier concealed. So by abandonment or death, he saps the strength of Greeks. It is Ulysses' way, and that is why he should be feared. And even if he were more eloquent than faithful Nestor, I still would not believe that when he left, abandoning Nestor in that battle, he did nothing wrong. Nestor was worn out and old and hampered by his horse's wounds, but when he asked Ulysses for his help, his comrade moved away. Diomedes, the son of Atreides, knows very well I have not made these accusations up. He often shouted out Ulysses' name and rebuked his craven friend, charging him with running away. Gods above looked down with their just eyes on what we humans do. For behold, the man who had refused his help required help. He had abandoned Nestor, and now he was to be abandoned too. The precedent the man himself had set was now applied to him. He shouted out, calling to his companions. I ran up. I saw him trembling, pale with fear, afraid his death was close at hand. I set my shield so its enormous size would cover him as he lay there, and saved his rotten life. Small reason to get any praise for that. If you prolong this contest, why not return to that location, bring back the enemy, the wound you had, and your usual fear, then crouch behind my shield, and under it, battle it out with me. Once I'd saved him, the wounded man, who did not have the strength to stand erect, just scurried off. No wound prevented him from running at top speed. Hector then moved up, bringing gods with him towards the battle. Wherever he charged, even brave men were afraid, not just you, Ulysses. That's how much he terrorized our ranks. But I picked up a massive rock, hurled it from far away, and laid him out while he was gloating over his success in bloody slaughter. When he challenged us to have one man confront him, I was the one who fought against him, and you men, you Greeks, prayed my lot would be the one selected. Your prayers were answered, and if you ask how that fight turned out, he did not prevail against me. Then look, Trojans are advancing with fire and sword, and Jupiter as well, against Aenean ships. Where is he now, the eloquent Ulysses? The truth is this, I was the one with this heart of mine. Saved 1,000 ships, our hopes of getting home. In return for that whole fleet, grant me these arms. But if you'll now allow me to speak candidly, those weapons of Achilles are seeking out a greater honor than I am. They wish to be united to my glory. Those arms are seeking Ajax, not Ajax the arms. Let that Ithacan Ulysses compare what I have done with slaughtering Rhesus and that coward Dolon, or capturing a son of Priam, Helenus, or stealing the image of Minerva. None of these was done in daylight, and in none of them was Diomedes absent. If you award these weapons for such trifling services, divide them up and give the greater share to Diomedes. But why offer them to that man from Ithaca, who always acts in secret and unarmed, and with his tricks deceives an unsuspecting enemy? The way that helmet made of gleaming gold shines out so brilliantly will only show where he is hiding and reveal his plans. What's more, that Dulichian head of his, once he puts on the helmet of Achilles, will not hold so great a weight. His arms, which are not made for war, will find that spear from Pelion too cumbersome and heavy. As for the shield, embossed with those designs of the vast universe, how will that suit the left arm of a coward born to steal? Why then, you craven fool, seek out a gift which will just drain your strength. And if the Greeks give you Achilles' weapons by mistake, that will not make your enemies afraid. They will have a fine excuse to strip you. Besides, running in flight, the only race where you surpass all others, you timid wretch, will only be much slower if you drag with you so great a load. Then, too, that shield of yours, which has been used so rarely in a fight, is still unharmed. Mine has 1,000 cracks from stopping spears, and I need a new one. But what's the point of talking? Let's end this by having people look at us in action. Why not set those arms of brave Achilles right in the center of the Trojan ranks, then order them to be retrieved from there? You can adorn the man who brings them back with what he has recovered." Ajax finished. After his last words, the common soldiers murmured among themselves until Ulysses, Laertes' warrior son, rose to his feet. He paused a moment, gazing at the ground, then raised his eyes, looked at all the leaders, and opened his mouth to start the speech they were expecting. His style was graceful and not ineloquent. "If my wishes, along with yours, you Greeks, had any force, we would not be having this great debate about the doubtful question of an heir, for then Achilles would have his weapons, and we would still have him. But unjust fate has taken him from you and me." And here Ulysses dabbed his eyes, pretending to wipe away a tear. What leader is more suited to succeed the great Achilles than the one we have to thank for making sure that mighty warrior joined up with us? Now you must not denigrate my rival because he seems so blunt, for he is dull. And do not let it hurt my argument that my shrewd mind has always helped you Greeks. As for my eloquence, if that is there, let no man feel upset, for now it pleads its master's case. It is often spoken out on your behalf, and no man should refuse the use of talents that he himself possesses. Now as to race and ancestry, those things we do not do ourselves. It's hard to call such matters ours, but since Ajax has claimed he is a great-grandson of Jupiter, I say my family blood begins with Jove, and I am just as many steps removed. Laertes is my father. His father was Arcesius, a son of Jupiter, neither of them guilty of a crime or condemned to exile. Through my mother, I can also link myself to Mercury, another noble line, for I have gods in both my parents' ancestries. But still, I'm not here asking for these weapons set before us because my mother gives me, on her side, a more splendid birth, or because my father is quite guiltless of his brother's blood. You must judge this case by our merits, provided Ajax gets no credit just because his father Telamon and Peleus were brothers. In dealing with such arms, you must consider not bloodlines, but respect for virtuous deeds. For if what matters is the nearest kin and closest heir, Peleus is his father, Pyrrhus is his son. What claim has Ajax? Let Achilles' arms be taken away to Phaia or to Skyros. And Teucer is just as much a cousin of Achilles as Ajax is. But does he seek these arms? And if he did, would you offer them to him? So, since this contest is one of actions and nothing else, I say that I have done more than I can easily describe in words, but still, I will set them out in order. Achilles' Nereid mother, Thetis, was aware her son was going to die, so she concealed her child and dressed him up in women's clothes. The use of this disguise deceived each one of us, including Ajax. So among a few things women like to buy, I placed some weapons, which would stir the heart in any man. And when warlike Achilles, who had not yet thrown off his female clothes, reached for the spear and shield, I shouted out, "Son of a goddess, that doomed citadel, the Paragram, is waiting there for you. Why hesitate to throw down mighty Troy?" I took him in hand. I sent that brave man out to do brave deeds, and so his exploits are my own. It was my spear that wounded warlike Telephus, and once I'd conquered him, as he was praying for help, I healed him. The fall of Thebes was my accomplishment. And give me credit for seizing Lesbos and Tenedos, Chrysia and Scylla, Apollo's cities, and for Skyros too. Think of me as a warrior whose hands knocked down Larnassus and its city walls and razed them to the ground. I will not list all Achilles' conquests, but there is no doubt I am the one who brought you the man who could kill savage Hector. Thanks to me, splendid Hector now lies dead. My weapons found Achilles. In return for those, I seek his weapons now. I gave him arms when he was still alive. Now he is dead. I want them back. When Menelaus' grief had spread to all the Greeks, 1,000 ships near Euboea filled the Bay of Aulis. But the winds blew from the wrong direction, or else there was no wind, and so the fleet, for a long time, simply waited. But then, according to a brutal oracle, King Agamemnon had to sacrifice his innocent child to cruel Diana. But he refused to carry out this act, and even grew angry at the gods themselves. Although a king, he was a father too. I used my skills with words to change his mind, to shift the affections of a parent towards the public good. The case I made was difficult, and the judge was biased, that I concede. And as I confess to this, may the son of Atreides forgive me. But the popular good, his brother's cause, and his regal responsibilities at last convinced the king that claims of blood weighed less than public glory. So I was sent to Clytemnestra, the young girl's mother, not to persuade her by some argument, but to use a trick and get her to agree that Iphigenia should come to Aulis. If Ajax had gone there instead of me, our sails would still remain without a wind. Then I was sent as an ambassador to the Trojan citadel, where I saw and boldly entered the assembly room of lofty Troy, still full of warrior men. I did not flinch, but argued for our cause, as Greece had asked me. I accused Paris, demanded the Trojans give back Helen as well as all the property he seized. And I won the sympathy of Priam and Antenor too, Priam's counselor. But Paris and his brothers and those men under his command who took the plunder could hardly keep their wicked hands off of me. Menelaus, you know this, for that day was the first time you and I faced dangers side by side. It would be tedious to describe the useful things I've done with stratagems and force during the course of this long war. After those first fights, the hostile Trojans for a long time stayed inside their city walls, giving us no chance for open conflict. But finally, in the 10th year, we fought. And in that time, Ajax, what did you do? When the only thing you know was fighting, what use were you? By contrast, if you ask what I did, I was setting ambushes to kill our enemies, digging ditches by our defensive wall, encouraging my companions so they could tolerate the tedium of protracted warfare with patient hearts, and handing out advice on how the soldiers could be fed and armed. And I was sent wherever I was needed. Then, lo and behold, King Agamemnon, deceived while sleeping with a dream sent to him by command of Jupiter, ordered us to abandon our concerns about the war we had begun, and leave, to go back in our ships and sail for home. He justified his order by appealing to his dream from Jupiter. But Ajax should have stopped him. He should have demanded the destruction of the Trojan citadel and fought back, the one thing he is good at. Why did he not try to stop those soldiers who were rushing to go home? And why not pick up his weapon and set an example which those fickle crowd of men could follow? This was not too much to ask from someone who never speaks except to boast aloud. But what about the fact that he too fled? Yes, I saw you. The sight made me ashamed when you turned tail and started to prepare the sails of our disgrace. I did not wait, but shouted at you. What are you doing? What mad fit, my friend, is pressuring you to run from captured Troy? After 10 years, what will you carry home except your shame? Grief made me eloquent. With words like these and others, I brought those stampeding men back from the fleet. The son of Atreides summoned an assembly of his allies, all still in a panic, and even then, Ajax, a son of Telamon, did not dare to utter a word. And yet Thyestes got up the courage to insult the king. I beat him for his vulgar insolence. I stood up and urged my frightened countrymen to fight our enemies, and with my voice, I gave them back the courage they had lost. So from that point on, whatever brave things you saw that fellow over there achieve are thanks to me, because I was the one who dragged him back when he was running home. Besides, who among the Greeks praises you, Ajax, or seeks your company? In my case, Diomedes shares all he does with me. He backs me up, and has always trusted Ulysses as a comrade. That is something, to be picked out of so many thousands of Greeks by Diomedes. I was not compelled into a fight by any lottery. and yet disregarding all the dangers of the enemy and the night, I went out and slaughtered Dolon, a Phrygian scout, whose mission was the very same as ours, but not before I forced him to reveal all the things that he knew. That is how I found out the plans of the perfidious Trojans. Once I discovered those, there was no need to keep on looking. I could have come back to enjoy the promised glory, but no, not content with that, I searched out the place where Rhesus pitched his tents and killed him there, in his own camp as well as his companions. Once I had achieved what I was after, I rode back in a chariot I captured, like the victor in a joyous triumph. Dolon demanded Achilles' horses for one night's work. So if you deny me Achilles' weapons, then Ajax may well be more generous than you. Why should I list those men Sarpedon led from Lycia, cut down by my sword? In all that bloodshed, I killed Cronius, son of Iphitus, Elastor and Chromis, Alcandor, Helios, Neaman, and Prytanis. I brought death to Thuon, Chrysamidas, Cyrops, and Enomus. Some others, less well known, fell at my hands below their city walls. I have wounds, my friends, honorable ones, as their locations show. If you don't believe me, take a look. Here is my chest, which has always worked to serve your interests. But the son of Telamon has lost no blood. In all these many years for his companions, his body has no wounds. And so what if he claims he uses his weapons to fight Trojans and Jupiter as well before our ships? I admit he did, for I do not wish to be mean-spirited and criticize any beneficial deed. But Ajax should not get sole credit for those actions, where others played their part. He should give you some of the honor too, for Patroclus from Actor's line, who was well protected because he was the image of Achilles, drove back the Trojans from the Grecian ships, which were about to be consumed by fire, along with Ajax, their defender. He thinks he is the only one who dared confront warlike Hector armed. But he forgets the king, the other leaders, and myself. He was the ninth to say he'd fight the man, and he was picked by chance. But then, most valiant warrior, how did that fight turn out? Hector walked away uninjured, without a single wound. And now, alas, it grieves me to bring back a memory so full of sorrow. The day Achilles, the bulwark of the Greeks, was killed, and yet no tears or pain or fear prevented me from picking up his body off the ground. And on these shoulders of mine, I carried the body of Achilles, and his armor too, the very weapons I'm anxious now to carry once again. I have strength enough for such a burden, and I have a mind which you may be sure will understand the honor you have done me. Was it really for this the sea nymph Thetis, Achilles' mother, was so determined to help her son she brought down from heaven works of such great artistry, so that Ajax, a crude soldier with no intelligence, could wear them? For he does not understand what is sculpted on that shield. Ocean, earth, high star-filled skies, the Pleiades, the Hyades, the bear that never moves down to the sea, the different cities, Orion's gleaming sword. He is asking you to give him weapons of which he does not know the meaning. And what about how he accuses me of running from the duties of harsh war and coming late into an enterprise which others had begun? Does he not see he is denouncing great Achilles too? If you consider it a crime to hide who one really is, both of us did that. And if delaying makes me culpable, I did join up before Achilles did. My dear wife detained me. With Achilles, it was his loving mother. We gave them those early days. The rest we gave to you. If I have no defense against that point, I do not fear a charge, which I would share with that heroic man, who was revealed thanks to Ulysses' skill. Ajax played no role. None of us should be astonished that his foolish tongue pours insults over me, for he complains about you too, and ought to be ashamed. Was it so wrong for me to falsely charge the son of Nauplius, yet fine for you to sentence him to death? Palamedes could not defend himself against a crime that was so great and clearly evident. You not only heard what he was charged with, but you saw his crimes exposed. Prove by that bribe. And I do not deserve to be accused if Lemnos, Vulcan's island, is still home to Philoctetes, since you yourselves agreed to leave him there. Defend what you have done. I won't deny I did convince him to withdraw from war and the hardship of our journey and to try to ease his agonizing pain by resting. He agreed, and he is alive. My advice not only was provided in good faith, it also proved effective. Now our seers all say that Piosus' son must be with us for Troy to be destroyed. Do not send me. It would be better if Ajax made the trip and with his eloquence calmed down that man driven mad with rage and sickness, or else came up with a sly trick to bring him back. If my mind ever stopped its work for you, the stream in the Simois would reverse its flow, and Ida's mountains stand there stripped of leaves, and Achaeans promised to help Trojans, before the brain in dim-witted Ajax came up with something useful to the Greeks. And though you, unyielding Philoctetes, are angry at your friends, the king and me, and though you never cease pouring curses on my head and in excruciating pain long for a chance to have me in your power and drain my blood, to have your way with me, as I did then with you, I will still go and try to bring you back with me. What's more, with fortune's help, I'll also get your arrows, just as I brought back that Trojan prophet Helenus, whom I captured and made known what gods had said about the fate of Troy. Just as I stole that statue from the shrine of Phrygian Minerva, surrounded by my enemies. Will Ajax now compare himself with me? We know the fates decreed Troy would never be overcome unless we had that statue. Where was he, the valiant Ajax? Where were the proud boasts of that great man? What made him fearful then? Why did Ulysses dare move through the centuries, commit himself to darkness of the night, and sneak past the sharp swords of the Trojans, to make his way inside not just the city walls, but even their high citadel as well, to snatch the goddess from her temple shrine, and once I had her, bear her back again through enemy lines? If I had not done that, the left arm of Ajax would bear his shield, all 7 layers of bull hide, in vain. On that night, I ensured our victory against the Trojans. On that very night, I conquered their citadel, for my theft made such a conquest possible. Ajax, you can stop your muttering and those looks, those attempts to bring up Diomedes. That deed has earned him his full share of praise. When you held up your shield before the ships, you were not alone. You had comrades there, a crowd of them, but I only had one. If he did not know that a man who fights is of less value than a man who thinks, and that prize should not be handed out merely to a fearless, strong right hand, he too might claim Achilles' weapons. And lesser Ajax, a more modest man, would also claim them, and fierce Eurypylus and Thoas, illustrious Andromeda's son, Meriones, would surely make a claim, as would his fellow countrymen from Crete, Idomeneus, and so would Menelaus, Agamemnon's brother. All these leaders have powerful hands and are my equals in the battlefield, and yet they follow my advice. Your right hand gives us useful help in combat, Ajax, but it needs guidance from my ingenuity. You have strength, but no intelligence. While I consider what the future holds, you can fight in war, but the son of Atreides and I select the proper time for battle. While you serve only with your body, I use my mind. The man who steers a ship is more valued than the man who rows, and the army chief is far above the soldier in the ranks. In just that way, and to that same extent, I am worth more than you. In my body, the mind has greater power than the hands, for all my energies are focused there. So now, you warrior chiefs, award those arms to the man who had stayed on watch for you. For all those years I spent with anxious cares, grant me this honor as compensation for all my service. Now my work is done. I have removed the barriers of fate, for I have made it possible to take High Pergamum and thus have captured it. So by our common hopes, by Troy's doomed walls, by the gods I snatched away so recently from Troy, and by whatever still remains which needs a clever mind to carry out. I pray that if there is anything bold and dangerous still left to undertake, remember me. And if you do not grant these arms to me, give them to her." With these words, he pointed to the fatal statue of Minerva. Ulysses' words swayed the group of leaders. The outcome showed what eloquence can do. The fluent speaker took the brave man's arms, and Ajax, who fought Hector man to man, who stood so often against sword and fire, and even Jupiter, for the first time met an enemy he could not repulse. His rage. Pulling out his sword, he shouted out, "At least this sword is mine. Or does Ulysses want this for himself as well? I must use it on myself, and this sword, so often steeped in Trojan blood, will now drip with its master's own, and thus no man could ever conquer Ajax except Ajax himself." He spoke these words, then drove his sword into his exposed flesh, deep inside his chest, which until that time had never felt a wound. His hand lacked the strength to pull the sword back out, but by itself his blood expelled the steel. On the green turf, the blood-stained ground produced a purple flower which earlier had grown out of the wound of Hyacinthus, the bloom whose petals in the middle bear the letters common to the Spartan lad and to the hero. A young man's cry of grief, a warrior's name. High, high, as a cry of lament. High, high, for the name of a hero.